Of all the stories Jesus ever told, few have traveled so far or sunk so deep. We have named hospitals after the Good Samaritan. We have written his charity into our statute books, the Good Samaritan laws that shield from prosecution those who stop to help a stranger in distress. The man has no name, no face, and yet 2,000 years later, the whole world still recognizes him. That is the strange power of this parable, found only in the Gospel of Luke. It begins, as so many great encounters do, with a question. A scholar of the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" It was no small question. Consider that the law of Moses contained, by the traditional rabbinic count, 613 commandments, 613 ways to walk rightly before God, 613 ways to stumble. A lifetime of study could be poured into them, and the lawyer asked it not to learn, but to trap, hoping perhaps that the carpenter's son from Nazareth would tangle himself in the very law he claimed to fulfill. But Jesus did not take the bait. He turned the question around like a key in a lock. "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" The man answered, well better perhaps than he knew. "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your being, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." In 2 breaths he had gathered the whole towering edifice of the law into 2 commandments. Love of God, drawn from Deuteronomy, and love of neighbor, drawn from Leviticus. The hundreds collapsed into a pair, and the pair in the end into a single word. Love. "You have answered correctly," Jesus told him. "Do this and you will live." It should have ended there, but the lawyer, Luke tells us, wished to justify himself, and so he reached for one more question, a narrowing question, a self-protecting question. And who is my neighbor? Beneath it lay an unspoken hope. Surely there was a line somewhere. Surely some people fell outside his circle of care. Surely the teacher would have to draw the circle tight, excluding the outsider. Jesus could have answered in the abstract. He could have said simply, "Everyone is your neighbor," and the lawyer might have nodded and gone home unchanged. Instead, Jesus did what only a master teacher does. He told a story with feeling and with edges, a story that would not let the scholar hide. A man fell victim to robbers as he went down from Jerusalem to Jericho. We should pause on that road because Jesus' first listeners would have shuddered at the mere mention of it. It plunged some 3,000 feet over a stretch of barren, rock-strewn miles, a corkscrew of blind turns, and hiding places so notorious for ambush that men called it the Bloody Pass. To walk it alone was to invite disaster, and disaster came. Robbers fell upon the man. They stripped him and beat him, and went off, leaving him half dead. Not dead, mark you, but half dead, which is the cruelest condition of all, too far gone to help himself, not yet far gone enough to be beyond help. Then down that same road came a priest. He saw the man and passed by on the opposite side. After him came a Levite, a servant of the temple. He too saw the man, and he too passed by on the opposite side. Here is the quiet horror of the parable. It is not the wicked who fail the wounded man, but the respectable. Not the godless, but the godly. The very men whose lives were built around the worship of God stepped wide of God's image, bleeding in the road. And then came a Samaritan traveler. We must feel the shock of that word, or we will miss the whole point. To the lawyer listening, the Samaritan was the outsider, the half-breed, the heretic, a man his people despised, and would not so much as share a cup of water with. If the story was to flatter its hearers, the hero would have been a third Jew, an ordinary Israelite arriving to put the proud clergy to shame. But Jesus did not flatter. He chose the one man in the whole tale his audience had been taught to hate, and he made him the hero. Watch what the Samaritan does, for the verbs themselves preach. He came upon him and was moved with compassion at the sight. Then he approached the victim, poured oil and wine over his wounds, and bandaged them. Then he lifted him onto his own animal, took him to an inn, and cared for him. And in the morning, when no one would ever have known, when the easy thing was simply to ride on, he reached into his purse, took out 2 silver coins, and gave them to the innkeeper with the instruction, "Take care of him. If you spend more than what I have given you, I will repay you on my way back." Compassion did not stay on the far side of the road. Compassion crossed over. The Samaritan spent his oil, his wine, his money, his time, and his safety on a man who could never repay him and might never even thank him. He moved out of his comfort zone and into another's pain, which is precisely what the word compassion means. It comes from the Latin, meaning to suffer with. He did not pity the man from a distance. He climbed down into the ditch with him. Then Jesus turned to the lawyer. "Which of these 3, in your opinion," he asked, "was neighbor to the robber's victim?" The man who had asked him, "Who is my neighbor?" hoping to draw a small circle around the people he felt obliged to love, was caught in his own trap. He could not even bring himself to say the hated word, Samaritan. "The one who treated him with mercy," he answered. And Jesus said, "Go and do likewise." In that single command, the parable reaches across the centuries and lays its hand on us. For the story has no proper ending. Jesus left it open on purpose. We are the ones who finish it. Every time we stoop to help another human being in need, we write the last line of the Good Samaritan ourselves. I have seen that last line written in my own day, and I will tell you how. Several years ago, a woman appeared at my doorstep in great distress. Her husband had thrown her out and ordered her to go and live with relatives in Texas. She arrived with nothing, no money, no transportation, not so much as a traveling bag to carry her grief in. "How did you get here?" I asked her. She told me that a young mother, seeing her wandering the streets of Okeechobee in tears, had simply stopped her car and brought her to me. "And where is this young woman now?" I asked. She pointed to the parking lot. "She's still in the car." A true Samaritan, I thought. I went out and invited her in, a young Hispanic mother with her 3 gorgeous children in the back seat. Between us, we arranged everything for this deserving woman. I was able to provide the bus fare to Texas, but it was that young mother who spontaneously offered the rest. She would keep the abandoned woman in her own home that night and drive her the 50 miles to the station in Fort Pierce in the morning and put her on the bus. She had every reason to pass by on the other side. She had 3 children, a full day, 100 good excuses. Instead, she stopped her car for a weeping stranger. The priest and the Levite, I am sorry to say, still walk among us. But so does the Samaritan, and sometimes she is sitting in a parking lot with 3 children, asking nothing for herself. Opportunities like that come to us more often than we think. They happen every single day, and so the parable presses its lessons upon us. First, beware the sin of sectarianism. Everyone is our neighbor. It does not matter their race, their color, their creed, or their background. Sectarianism is the quiet conviction that we are bound to help only our own, that Catholics owe love to Catholics, Protestants to Protestants, Jews only to other Jews, Muslims only to Muslims. The Samaritan owed the wounded Jew nothing by that reckoning. He helped him anyway, helped people in need, whoever and wherever they are. Second, learn the difference between loving and liking. The Jews did not like the Samaritans, and many felt that this dislike excused them from any obligation of love toward them. But love is not the same thing as liking. Liking is a feeling, and no one can command a feeling. You are under no obligation to like everybody. Love is a calling and a decision. The Christian is obliged to love everybody. Yes, even his enemies. What good is it to love only those who love you? Jesus reminds us even pagans do that. The Samaritan need not have liked the man in the ditch, but he showed his love for him by what he did. Third, show mercy whenever you meet a person in need. It was mercy that set the Samaritan apart, not his theology, not his good standing, but his willingness to be moved and then to act. Here the parable joins hands with the Beatitude. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall be shown mercy. The mercy of God is offered to every one of us, but if we wish to receive it, we must pass it on. Mercy grows when we share it. We cannot keep this blessing if we refuse to share it with others in need. By these things, and 1,000 more like them, we complete the story Jesus left unfinished. We finish it not with fine words, but with one small act at a time, by stopping the car, by crossing the road, by climbing down into another's trouble. We finish it simply by helping a fellow human being in need. Go and do likewise. God bless you. Thank you for listening, and I am Hugh Duffy.